So the next one, item 7, annual climate change strategy, carbon management plan and climate change fund updates report. So we've got David Dixon. Right. So which is going to repeat the reports? One on both? But whoever's going to do it, can you say your name and introduce your job title, please?
My name's David Kidston. I'm Strategy and Partnerships Manager. And the report in front of you provides an update on the Council's carbon management plan, which sets out actions relating to the Council's own estate and vehicles, but also the current climate change strategy, which covers wider actions to support residents, businesses and organisations to reduce their carbon emissions. So in the report, I've highlighted progress in delivering some of the key actions across the 5 objectives of the climate change strategy. If you're interested, we have also published a fuller document on the website that sets out in more detail the work that's been done over the past year to deliver all 49 actions, but as I say, the committee report covers some of the key things that have been delivered in the past year. I also wanted to highlight that the report outlines a proposed response to the Cambridge Plastic Pledge, which has been developed by Shepworth Wildlife Park, and the recommendation in the report is to endorse our response to the Plastic Pledge. I'm happy to take any questions that members may have on the report, with the caveat that the climate change strategy is a corporate document that includes actions from many services in the council, and I'm very familiar with some of those. I have less detail on others, so if I'm unable to fully answer your questions, I can follow those up with the relevant officers.
Thank you very much, David. So any questions from councillors? Yes, Councillor Collins.
I've got 2 questions, if that's okay. Firstly, I was at the recent Community Clean-up Day, I'm looking at 7.1 here, at the recent Community Clean-up Day in King's Hedges, which was really popular. As we know, we have a fly tipping issue in the ward, as we do in other wards. I just wondered what scope there was to potentially increase the number of community clean-up days throughout the year, and how that is also sitting alongside the current scrap fly tipping campaign, whether they're sort of working together. And also on 7.2, in terms of drinking water, I don't know if officers are aware of a current campaign, 50 fountains, which I've been made aware of by Cambridge Sustainable Food. It's essentially a commitment to use to provide drinking fountains and public drinking water, and I wondered if it was something we could discuss further with a view to the council potentially signing up to that campaign. Thank you.
Councillor, any more? Yes, Councillor Martinelli.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions on the report. So I guess I was looking at bullet point 3.18, which says that essentially the council has met its carbon reduction targets as of 2019, and I was wondering when new targets would be set and whether we thought these targets were ambitious enough, and in particular in relation to that, going back to the initial justification for the carbon reduction schedule on bullet point 3.1, we talk about how the UK government in June 2019 set a net zero carbon by 2050 target, and I was just wondering whether we thought the council thought that UK governmental target was good enough. On a sort of more specific note, and taking into account what you said about this is obviously a very wide-ranging document, we were looking at a couple of things on the sort of transport strategy. In particular, we've heard about the car club, and this is all under bullet point 6 from page 72 earlier, and I was wondering whether we felt the council and departments had done enough to advertise the start of the new car club. Obviously we'd all be in favour of promoting that as much as possible to reduce congestion, improve air quality and help our carbon footprint. And I was also looking at the increased cycle parking provision, again all under bullet point 6.1. which notes that there are a number of new parking spaces across the city. But I was just wondering, it seems to suggest there are only 2 cargo bike spaces out of over 100, and I was wondering whether there would be more scope to change that ratio if that is the case, because if we're encouraging people to use cargo bikes to move stuff around the city, help transport of children and so on, whether there might be scope to improve that ratio to help people adjust to that.
Thank you, Councillor. Any more questions from councillors? Doesn't look like it. No. Okay. In regards to those, please, David.
Okay, thank you, Chair. In terms of the community cleanups, those are sessions that I believe are run jointly by our housing services and by the shared waste service. There are obviously a number of cleanups across different residential areas of the city, and I think part of the purpose of them is to increase recycling, to address the fly tipping issue. I think I'd need to follow up with the housing service, particularly around whether there are plans to expand that, and whether I think it would relate to, I suppose, budgetary issues for the service in terms of delivering more. In terms of the 50 fountains scheme, that's not something that I'm sort of familiar with, but I'm happy to sort of follow that up and see if that is something that would be appropriate and that the council could support. But we have been actively promoting the refill scheme, which is a national scheme, and you can access the refill app or a map which provides details of all the sites in the city where residents and visitors can get access to free drinking water. So, as I've noted in the report, that includes the new public water fountain that's been installed on Parker's Piece. And also a number of other council sites that provide free water as well as businesses across the city. Turning to Councillor Martinelli's questions, in terms of so we have a target, as I've said in the report, for the City Council's own emissions, which was a 15% reduction by 2021. With an aspiration for 20%. As I've noted in the report, the City Council's emissions have reduced by 25% over the past 4 years, and we have a number of further sort of carbon reduction projects planned that we would anticipate would further reduce our emissions. I think we'd be looking to set a new target for the City Council's own emissions in the next iteration of the carbon management plan, which we'll be developing over the course of the next year. But having said that, I think that the target is useful in that it sort of focuses our minds, but I want to sort of reassure members of the committee that officers are actively pursuing carbon reduction across our estate and our vehicle fleet, as we were hearing under the earlier item. So yeah, we definitely have plans to take that forward. In terms of the net zero target nationally, which was recently set by government at the date of 2050, I think, as I've noted in the report, that's consistent with the aspiration that we set in the climate change strategy back in 2016. As members of the committee will be aware, the council declared a climate emergency in February this year, and we called, as part of that, we called upon government and industry to take the action and give us the powers necessary to try and achieve net zero by 2030. So I think our position would be that we would want to see the city become net zero as soon as possible, recognising the scale of the kind of the emergency and the challenge globally. In terms of the start of the new car club, I think I'd have to go back to our commercial services and our parking team in terms of what kind of promotion has been done on that. I'm assuming that we released a press release and all the usual things that we would do, but I can follow up the query from Councillor Councillor Martinelli and come back to the committee on that. And similarly, I think cycle parking provision, we've highlighted the new spaces that have been created in our car parks and on street in the past year. That's been part of a sort of ongoing programme by the City Council working with the county and other partners. I think we would want to increase parking spaces for cargo bikes for the reasons outlined by Councillor Martinelli, both for families in the city, but also for sort of those sort of last mile delivery and all those sorts of things. But I'd have to again go back to the parking services to see what kind of scope there is practically within the physical constraints in the car parks to increase the number beyond the two mentioned in the report.
Thanks so much, David. So the recommendations are 2.1 and 2.2. The first one is the note, and the second one is approve the proposed response to shut the car parks plastic lake. So I think I can take those together. So all those in favour of those recommendations? Thank you very much. And does the Executive Council accept recommendations, and does the Executive Council want to say anything?
Yes, I just wanted to say that in relation to the targets, a couple of us were at Labour Party conference last week where we voted to have a national target for the Labour Party of 2030. Which is obviously one step forward, but also more importantly, it was agreed that the necessary funding would be available to make that happen. So it wasn't just an empty target. So we would be very happy to work towards that as a council, but we've also got a Labour government that supports us to do that.